Hi there, this is Scott down in the lounge. I'm getting ready to start a new book, so I'm going to talk about it a little bit and talk about the author a little bit. In case you did not catch the last episode that I produced a few days ago, I am not continuing with my original plan to read each of the Pulitzer Prize winning novels in order. I'm not going to rehash why I've made that decision here. If you're interested in knowing more about that, check out that last episode. Going forward, my plan is to focus on what I have found to be, with the help of the internet, the top 200 or 300 best novels ever written. And I want to focus on the best books, but I might digress here and there into some slightly lesser known or revered books occasionally. But my plan is to stick to what many websites and aggregators have considered to be the best novels. So I kind of cast around a little bit trying to figure out what I was going to do for my first novel in this new phase of the podcast. And I thought about doing some of the Russians, but then I ran into some concerns about translations and which were the best translations to use and whether newer translations are usable by me because they might not be in the public domain. So I decided to wait a little bit on those, although I will be reading all of the great Russian novels. Same with some of the other French novels. I thought about reading The Count of Monte Cristo, which is a French novel and thus requires a translation. So same problem there. I will read that novel eventually. I'm just not sure which translation I'm going to use. I haven't figured any of that out yet. So I decided I was going to go with an English novel and avoid the whole translation problem, at least for a little while. So I kind of threw a dart at a dartboard and landed on Henry James and his novel, The Portrait of a Lady. That's what I'm going to be reading first. According to the Greatest Books website, which is my primary source of information now when it comes to choosing appropriate books based on their greatness or not, Henry James comes in as the 17th greatest author of all time. Most known for The Portrait of a Lady, The Turn of the Screw, The Wings of the Dove, and many others. My plan is to read probably all three of those. I'm reading The Portrait of a Lady now, of course. I will definitely read The Turn of the Screw, which is also extremely highly rated. I might also read The Wings of the Dove and one or two other of his latest novels from his third phase of writing. The Portrait of a Lady is considered to be the 78th greatest book of all time, according to this site, The Greatest Books, which is an aggregator of almost 700 different great novels lists found online and offline. The Turn of the Screw, which is another book of his that I will probably read sometime soon, is number 206 on the greatest books of all time. So, definitely a great author, according to these reviewers. I've never read anything that he's done, though, so I'm really excited about this. Just a tiny bit of information about Henry James. He was born in New York in 1843 and died in London in 1916. He's considered one of the greatest novelists in the English language. He's best known for The Portrait of a Lady, The Turn of the Screw, and his three later works, which are kind of grouped together as a series of increasingly experimental novels in his later phase of writing. Those are The Ambassadors, The Wings of the Dove, and The Golden Bowl. Again, I might get to all of those if I have the time. With his family as a young person, he lived in America and then across the ocean in England and in different places around Europe. He did come back to the United States in 1862 to attend Harvard Law School, but realized he was not really interested in studying law and started to focus more on writing at that point. He had his first work published in 1863, and his first novel was published in 1871. His first work to be widely acclaimed was The Portrait of a Lady, which was published in 1880 through 1881 as it was serialized. This was part of what was considered to be his first period of writing. And this period focused on what was considered to be an international theme, focusing on the experiences and the conflicts of Americans in Europe and Europeans in America. He wrote several novels, and probably the best examples of his early work are, again, The Portrait of a Lady and another novel called Daisy Miller. Starting in 1881 through about 1890, he moved into what is considered to be his second period of writing. This is where he started to focus on social issues in writing novels The Bostonians and The Princess Casamassima. These novels tended to focus on class struggles and the rights of women. In this second period of writing, he also focused on writing plays and lots of short stories. And the final part of this second phase is when he started to write some more interesting and sometimes bizarre stories. And that's where The Turn of the Screw and The Altar of the Dead were written. Themes in this part of his writing phase tended to focus on characters who are obsessed or insane or haunted or something like that. Starting about 1896 until the end of his writing career, which was about 15-20 years later, the final period, which is considered to be his major phase of writing by many of his friends and critics, he returned to the international theme, most obviously exhibited by the three large novels of his later years, as I already mentioned, The Ambassadors, The Wings of the Dove, and The Golden Bowl. More specific information about The Portrait of a Lady. It was originally written, as I said, in the early 1880s over a period of a couple of years. The initial publication of The Portrait of a Lady was in the early 1880s. Toward the end of his writing career, he assembled what he called the New York editions of his fiction. He did a lot of revisions and wrote some prefaces for the books, and he did this with The Portrait of a Lady. This is the version that I'm going to be reading. So this is not the original publication version. This is the revised version by the author. And this is what is included in Project Gutenberg online. And so that's the version I have access to. So that's what I'm going to be reading. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started on this. It's going to be a long one. It's got 2 volumes to it. The first volume goes to chapter 27. And then volume 2 continues with chapter 28 through 55. It looks like most of these chapters are going to be single recordings for each chapter. There might be a couple of podcasts where I combine a couple of chapters together. I don't really know for sure, but I think this novel's going to take me a little longer than the previous one. So I hope you stick through it because I think this is really going to be a great one. All right, let's get started with The Portrait of a Lady.